Today, November 4th, class title, God, Demonstrator and Demonstration. I want to start by sharing with you a thought that popped in my head when I first got up and was starting to get my wife together for the morning. God is the demonstrator. That thought popped right in my head. God is the demonstrator. I said, wasn't a voice. It was more of a thought or an idea, but it was clear. God is the demonstrator. Then I immediately went to, I will walk in them, I will be their God, and they will be my people. I had posted that earlier. Then what came was, it's no longer no, that didn't come next. What came was, in and of myself, I can do nothing. The Father within, he doeth the works. I was thinking about that as I was waking up, and that's what made pop in, God is the demonstrator. Because if in and of myself I can do nothing, then God within is doing everything. The next thought that came was, then if I can do nothing, I can't believe. This I that I consider to be a fabrication. And so you think about the roots of a tree, can't do anything except let the nourishments from the earth come up into the roots and come out into the tree. The roots can't do a thing. They can only be the channel that allows the nutrients to come in. God must be doing the believing. God must be doing the speaking. God must be what Jesus was talking about when he says, whosoever shall say unto the mountain, be thou removed. Well, I certainly can't tell a mountain to move, and it moves. But this God that's walking in me, talking in me, is aware of its own creation. And because God is aware of his own creation, God knows how to sustain it and how to maintain it. That's why that post came. Grace is always now. There's no need for me to tell God what needs to be done. God would look back and say, what needs to be done? Where did I miss it the first time? What did I not get right when I created the universe? Where were you, Job, to instruct me on what I was doing? And why didn't you tell me then that I was leaving something incomplete? Go ahead, answer, Job. You're going to tell me how to get rid of the bunion on your foot. You're going to tell me how to straighten out your situation. You're going to tell me how, that you need this and you need that. I don't have any needs, Job, and I'm walking in you. How could you have a need if you are the channel that I am working through? Behold, I stand at the door. Can you imagine the nutrients saying to the roots, behold, I stand at the door. If you open the door, I'll come in and I'll feed you. The roots put up no fight. And the nutrients just come right on in. And if the branches won't accept the nutrients, they get lopped off, dropped down in the pile, and are burned. That burning in this world we call sickness and disease. We have been so trained to accept that we are, at some particular point, going to have problems. We are going to get sick. We are going to get well. It's going to be a circle constantly throughout life. This is cold season. This is flu season. Now we have COVID season. This is, I don't know, wait for the next pandemic. We've been trained to believe that that's what life is about. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and in the middle, those are the ones who work like a dog and slave for 30, 40 years, and then they're put out to pasture called retirement at the end of all of that in their 60s when it comes to having worth. Yet, you can't put God out to pasture. Awake thou that sleepest, and Christ will give thee light. That's what Paul said. Just the agreement that in and of myself, that self that I call Michael, can't do a thing. He can't even die daily. But if he can get out the way, if he can stop trying to do what the people in the past, his trainers, if he could just say, I'm not going to accept any of that anymore, I'm going to realize that there is something within that's greater than this little personality self that I'm calling myself. I don't need to show people who I am. I don't need to get out here and be the big boss man. I'm just going to let this nutrient that's already there, I'm going to let it come forth. In and of myself, I can't believe this. I can't have faith. In and of myself, I can't do any of this at all. But the Father within, he doeth the works. That Father within is consciousness, awareness, totally aware of its universe, totally aware of everything in it. For the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. Understanding that, there's a commitment made, a dedication. There's a dedication of channel, transparency, like a window. The light comes through. Consciousness, light, understanding. I go into the Father. Why? Because the Father consciousness is aware that there are no problems. In this world, Jesus said, you will have tribulation, but fear not, I have overcome the world. What was he talking about? There's a sense of who you think you are that will see all kinds of problems, troubles, tribulations, sicknesses, diseases. In short, error, evil. Have you ever asked yourself who created evil? And the answer would have to come back, nobody. Because no man can create anything. God is creator and creation. God is demonstrator and demonstration. God is aware of all that he created, and there is nothing else that can be going on except what God is. But this has to be the dedicated consciousness. Our consciousness, our awareness must be dedicated to the fact that there is a power, the only power, living in me, living in you, and living in everybody on the face of the globe. I don't care what creed, color, nationality, I don't care what or who they are. God is all in all. God is the demonstrator, and God is demonstrating itself, light as and in every person on the globe. And God says all shall know me. It says all shall be taught of God. What does it mean to be taught of God? It means God is teaching, and God is listening, and God is doing the will, the demonstration. My kingdom is not of this world. So there can be no creator of evil. Well, where did it come from? It came from nowhere. Why can't I see it? Because somebody trained me to look at it and believe that it was real. How did I get separated from God? I didn't. Somebody trained me to feel like I was separated from God. Nobody told me in the beginning, I am with you always. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Nobody told me that. But one day, a book was given to me, and it had that in there. A book was given to me. God, the substance of all form. That just put a dink in the ice. Didn't even put a crack in the ice. Just a little dink. Conscious union with God. A little more of a dink. Beyond words and thoughts. The dink is getting a little deeper. The sun is shining on the ice, and the ice is breaking. I and my Father are one. Big crack. Starting to crack open now. And then the thought comes, am I learning? Consciousness is unfolding. That's another book that came. The awareness that God is all. That wasn't coming back then. Not 30, 40 years ago, that wasn't coming. Oh, no, don't ever associate yourself with God. People will talk about you. You'll be ostracized. You don't even have a right to ask God a question. Don't ask God. Here's Jesus. Ask anything in my name. That means in my nature. What was the nature of Jesus? It was Jesus' nature not to be Jesus the man, but Jesus the Christ. Whom do you say I am? Simon, hearing. Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. Wow, Simon. Flesh and blood didn't tell you that. You didn't. Here's one of my pet words. You didn't figure it out. My Father, which is in heaven. Where is heaven? It's in you, Simon. The Father within you caused a realization, demonstrated itself in you. Guess what, Simon? With that understanding, you are rock, Peter, and Greek is Petros, stone, solid. On the firmness of the attitude of that solidity, I am going to call out those that are ready to receive that awakened light. That's the church. And I'm going to give you the keys to the kingdom. Suppose you walked around all day long thinking, I have the keys to the kingdom. The first thought ought to come to you, what are the keys? What are the keys to the kingdom? Treatment. I start out talking about what God is. Meditation. I start letting all kinds of thoughts, particularly scriptural promises. And as I start thinking about God, talking about God, truth, only truth about God, especially truths like God is all, God is omnipresent, God is all presence everywhere, so wherever I am, God is and all is well. Omnipotence, all power. There's no other power, no other authority, no other ability. And omniscience, all knowledge, all intelligence. As I'm thinking like that, I start to feel a little swelling, something that makes me feel like I am lifted out of this human, normal, material, mortal, whatever you want to call it, awareness of who I think I am, because all it can ever give me is I have a personal responsibility for doing the will of God, and I don't. I have no personal responsibility. This is fabrication. If in and of myself I can do nothing, the Father was in, doeth the work, then the Father has the responsibility of maintaining and sustaining itself, its universe, me, and everybody else in it, because it all belongs to Him. The earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, everything in it, the world and they that dwell therein. I posted this on Facebook the other day, and quite a few people, the crack opened up, the light started shining in, and it was this. When you find your identity in the one who created you, you will have a totally new perspective. That's what I mean by the Father within. He doeth the works. Once you realize that the personal responsibility for believing God is not yours, but it is God who contemplated itself in the beginning, in principle, and demonstrated a universe. Well, when did He do that? It always was. Grace is now. It's always now. There's no point where there was nothing and God said, we're going to create a world. God is the world. God is everything. And it is God's responsibility to maintain and sustain itself. That's how we get, He will perform that which is appointed unto me. That's how we get, He will perfect that which concerns me. Well, if He's going to perfect that which concerns me, I kind of look stupid trying to tell Him what I need Him to perfect, if He is totally aware of Himself as me and in me. He goes before me, the presence, to make the crooked places straight. Every time I feel that little presence warming up, glowing up, whatever it's doing in me, making me feel that new perspective that I have, because my identity is found in the one that created me, my next thought ought to be, there must be something out here that's crooked, and this presence within me is going before me to make it straight, working it out. So why do I get so frustrated? Because the little I, this little fabricated sense of self, this little self that seems to be separate and apart from what God is trying to believe it. And it's bringing forth doubt, What if this? What if that? And my first thought has to be, I go into the Father. Father, I don't need to tell you what I'm going through right now. You are aware that you are all. That's what it means to turn it over. Let go. It's no longer I that live, but Christ that lives my life, that lives in me. This thought came to me one day. One thing you lack, consistency. All I'm asking you to do is close your eyes or keep them open. I don't care, whatever. But all I'm asking you to do is stop however many times during the day that you think about it and turn within. Start thinking about God. Start thinking about Christ. Start thinking about truth, and let this little feeling, if that's how you know the presence. Some people say, my son called it, you mean that ooze, bubbling and burning? I remember when Kenny, my brother, said he used to feel like a lightheadedness, something swarming about in his head. I feel this glowing, it's like flaming embers. They become intense, and then they go down. Some people feel goosebumps, but they know they have a new perspective. Something different is happening. Something is taking over and causing that little eye, that thinks it is separated from God, it's causing it to die. And Paul says it dies daily. Goldsmith said it'll never, ever, as long as you're walking on this earth, go completely out, because there are so many who appear to be evil, to be sick. Hospitals filled up to the brim. Wars, Russians, people killing people. And Jesus would look at him and say, neither do I condemn you. Do you think Jesus in his own personality self would be able to say, I'm just going to overlook that? Neither do I condemn you. No. God within him is saying, that's not who I am. I see this perfectly. I know you. I created you. I maintain and sustain you. And as long as you start becoming more consistent with thinking like that, that means you are allowing God within you to think, to feel, to walk, to talk, and to build the church. The keys to the kingdom have been given to you. And you are using those keys to unlock the prison doors. What prison doors? The ones that you appear to be bound by. There's another thought. Kenny and I were talking about it yesterday. What you bind on earth, that was the end of his conversation, Jesus' conversation with after he called Simon Peter. What you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and what you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. I'm just going to bind the strong man, this little eye. How do I bind him? By loosing the truth within me, by letting God think, act, talk, walk, heal through me. I don't need any credit. I just need to be still and see the salvation of the Lord. What salvation? God delivering people through my understanding that I don't have any personal responsibility for doing any of it. I don't have any personal responsibility for living any of this life. It says it's no longer I that live, but Christ that lives my life. Christ has the responsibility of living life and maintaining and sustaining itself through the Father. Christ is the I that goes into the Father. Christ is the identity of who I am. Just think about Moses trying hard as he can to get some people to understand, trying hard as he can to free the Israelites from the Egyptians. Not working. And then God within him takes him out into a desert. And he's out there for 40 years. I've been out here 41 years. And I'm just beginning now to see that God is doing the thinking. When I wake up and that's on me, grace is now. When I wake up and the thought comes to me, God is the demonstrator. God is the demonstration. I don't have anything to do with any of that. And each time I realize that I have nothing to do with that from a micro or personal standpoint, I am solid as a rock. And God is calling me out. And God is saying, okay, now you can be a channel. I can come through you. I can resolve all kinds of issues. You can keep trying all you want to try to heal your wife. You can keep trying to heal your grandson. You can keep trying and praying for people and doing this. That's not prayer. We saw in the Our Father, in the Aramaic, prayer is to set a trap. I am binding the inability to pray correctly because it is God who prays. I am loosing God to pray. I am loosing God to trap his own thoughts within me. And the fruit, the blossoms, and everything else begin to express because I have found my identity to be a channel that God works through. I and the Father are one. You are I. We appear to be surrounded by an army of little eyes. Everywhere we look, there are people with opinions, people with crazy beliefs, people destroying people. Kenny and I, again, we were talking about yesterday, I was saying there's nothing for me to look at on TV. He said, yeah, only thing on there is dark. Football games, hospitals, and a lot of killing. Dark. Because it appears that that's what people want to see. You will not have to fight in this battle. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. As Jamal and my friend Sky say, cut it out. Quit. Stop. Don't get sucked into having a plan. Remember, we always laugh and joke. Mike Tyson said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Forget about the plan. I think that's why it says man makes his plans, but God directs his steps. I have never seen God direct my steps in line with a plan that I have made. Never, ever. Because the plan always has to do with some little I that's separated from God, separated from what I am, outside of me, nothing to do with what I really am. This little I plans on how it's going to do something, and God directs my steps. And the first step is always get rid of that little guy. He's not going to take you where you think you're trying to go. By the way, you're already where you're trying to go. You just can't see it because you keep looking through that little eye. Take your shoes off. You're on holy ground. It's solid. It's an understanding. I am the Son of God, the channel through which God works through. Jesus knew that intimately. He was aware that God is consciousness. God is aware of itself, and God is aware of all of his children. So when we say God is the demonstrator and God is the demonstration, we automatically think about some type of a sign that's coming forward. We automatically think, here's a guy, he's sick, and God is going to demonstrate changing his broken bones or his pneumonia, his whatever the sickness is, his Alzheimer's, his cancer. God is going to change that to not having it. Can you imagine if that's God's job? God would be all over the world all the time and spending all of his time changing broken bones into to not being broken. God would be, and not to mention all of the people who don't have anything, not much to eat. God's got to go find them something to eat. And God spending all of his time fixing stuff. And it dawns on us, God demonstrates God. Perfection, harmony, wholeness. God causes itself, I like to see it like this. God causes itself within us to always remember that God is resting in the creation and nothing has ever changed about the perfection that he has done. There's nothing that can change. It is all finished. I am consciousness, aware that I am, one with this Father whose good pleasure is to give me the kingdom of the Word. That which I'm seeking, I am. Well, what are you seeking? I'm seeking the kingdom. How are you seeking the kingdom? By allowing the nutrient of the Word to flow in. By not paying attention to this little eye. By not being distracted by this little eye. For some reason, I, the Son of God, can sort of look out the corner of my eye and see this little guy, this little eye guy, and think that he is distracting. But it's what the mystics call choice. In the Son consciousness, and that's what I honestly believe Jesus meant when he says, I go into the Father. In the Son consciousness, there's always choice. To choose to pay attention to this little guy who has nothing in common with who I am, and to choose to go into the Father. In other words, I rise. As Son of God, I rise into what the mystics call the fourth dimension. That's not hearers only, but doers. I rise where I see error and evil, sin and sickness and disease and lack and poverty and limitation. Where I see that, I have a choice as a Son of God. I can look at what that little I personality nothing self is saying, or I can close my eyes to it and rise into the Father consciousness, because as the prodigal was on his way, his father came and met him, put a robe around him and a ring on his finger, kissed him on the neck. My son who was lost, separated, made the right choice. God demonstrates me coming home. God demonstrates me coming into the Father. God demonstrates me making the right choice as the Son of God. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. Who is the I? Son and Father consciousness. I, the Father, am saying, come unto me, all you that labor, and I will demonstrate peace. I will demonstrate that you have never, ever left home. You have never, ever been separated from that you really are, from the Father. Let me read you a few statements that I jotted down. I don't even remember when I jotted them down, but when I get these, I just write them down, because I know that I'm the channel and God is doing the writing through me. 1, every problem is created by personal sense or mortal mind. Since there is only one mind, the mind of Christ, there can be no problems. Number 2, nothing is hindering. As soul, we look through the appearances and see and discern God's creation. Number 3, man is not a creator. Man attempting to create or to heal is a fabricator. God left nothing to chance. All is perfect. The only way we'll ever see it is I go into the Father. I choose to lose or to leave this little I guy and go into the Father. Number 4, the fields are white unto harvest. Fear not, I have overcome the world of personal power of beliefs, of evil. Never give up. Choose to look and see the light. For that which I'm seeking, I am. He who seeks, finds. Number 5, my kingdom is not of this world. My counsel has nothing to do with resolving world problems. Resolving non-existent beliefs. God is looking through my eyes and seeing his creation and calling it very good. In Aramaic, it says very beautiful. Think about all of the people coming on TV, selling creams and facial stuff to be beautiful. And God says, I am beautiful. There's nobody else but me. Number 6, heaven is always right where appearances seem to be. Thy will is done in earth as it is in heaven. And 7, harmonious appearances take the forms of my understanding that I am. I am soul, Son of God. God lives and moves and has its being through me. And in him we live and move and have our being. God demonstrates God. God is the demonstrator. God is the only demonstration. And the only thing that God ever demonstrates is the Word that becomes flesh, which already is flesh. Creation is finished. The fields are already white unto harvest. And God has placed us perfectly in his consciousness. God, demonstrator, and demonstration. The only thing God ever demonstrates is his consciousness of who he is in all and as all. Amen. And so it is.